With that theme of easy, we'll start off with Idaho proposes statewide preemption law for knife regulation. This comes by several sources. In a move that could reshape the landscape of knife regulation in Idaho, Representative Jordan Redmond, a Republican from Coeur d'Alene, has introduced a bill aimed at prohibiting local governments from regulating knives. This proposed legislation seeks to extend some preemption law that currently protects firearms from local regulation to also cover knives, asserting that knives are a form of arms protected by the Second Amendment. The bill, if passed, would prevent cities, counties, municipal corporations, health districts, or irrigation districts, kind of an odd one there, from enacting their own rules regarding the possession, sale, transfer, or manufacturing of knives. However, it is important to note that the bill would not strip school districts and courthouses of their authority to regulate knives, allowing them to continue to impose restrictions if deemed necessary. Representative Redmond argues that the bill would align Idaho with 13 other states that have enacted similar laws. This legislation aims to create a uniform standard across states, preventing a patchwork of local regulations that could confuse or entrap law-abiding citizens. The bill's introduction marks the beginning of its journey through the legislative process. It is clearly the way for a full public hearing in a legislative committee, after which it must pass the Idaho House of Representatives and the Idaho Senate before reaching Governor Brad Little's desk for final consideration. Which I don't think this is going to be one of those stories that's contentious for us to talk about today, because I would argue that most Idahoans love their guns, and by icto facto, they love their knives. I regularly joke that you can you can tell when a boy has graduated to being a man in Idaho. He starts off with carrying a knife around everywhere, and then he graduates to having a gun on him at all times.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, like I remember there's been so many different events I've had with friends and stuff. And as high schoolers, you'd be sitting there and someone's like, hey, I need something to help open some girl or something. And then guys like 26 knives later, like, hello, here you go. But then as you get older, you get some bigger toys.
Yeah, my son actually just got his first quality knife. His uncle got him, actually both of his uncles got him knives. So yeah, it's definitely a thing.
What brand?
So he got a Leatherman.
Okay.
And so that was very exciting. And the other was just a folding pocket knife, a locking blade. It was a small one, but it was nice.
So he's going with the full knife, not a Swiss Army knife type of thing then, right?
That's what he has currently.
Okay.
We'll see what happens.
The addiction starts young, no?
Well, yeah, it does. I know it did for me. I enjoyed that as well. My grandpa died when I was, I don't know, 12. And one of the things, and Grammy wanted to gift her grandchildren with stuff, and there were only 3 of us at the time, so it was easy. And so she was like, well, anything of his, just kind of take. And so I took a pocket knife and a little Swiss Army knife, and I kept that on me for a long time. So yeah, no, I agree that that infatuation with knives is a good thing.
Right. And I guess kind of coming back to the bill, I don't think we have to discuss it too long, but obviously I think this is a good position to take if you're a person who sits there and says, the right of the people is to bear and have, we'll go very broad here and I'll be very generous, the right to bear defensive weaponry of some kind. I would say that would also include knives. So if you're going to say yes to guns, you're going to say yes to knives. So usually, like a lot of things, there's times where legislation just needs to close loopholes and stuff where courts like to wiggle and weasel, and lawyers and stuff, because, that's the game, right? You have the rules and you play within it. But the main point, the broader point I think one can derive from this is that you do see in other countries where they've been really, really hard on guns, because I would argue the reason that they're banning the guns isn't as much because of the gun per se, but it's because of an idea that you're trying to get rid of an implement that causes harm, and you're not looking at the person, you're looking at the tool. And so, gun is scary, right? Look at that black thing and that muzzle and the bullets and stuff, and it's a scary thing, right? So we ban it. But a lot of times you see in those countries that they do that. I think England and Australia, I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but I remember reading them. Tons of knife crime. And I think that would be a perfect example of people are going to have weapons, and it's far better to let your populace be armed, unless you're a totalitarian government, to protect themselves and to keep the government kind of on edge and a little bit accountable there.
Yeah, well, it's something we talked about even before with in regard to guns. We talked about it with arming of teachers, voluntary arming of teachers. And I want to make that clear because someone was commenting on that. But yeah, it's a voluntary thing. The way you stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with the gun. Now, a knife is not quite the same because that, like, stopping a guy with a knife requires getting in close to him.
A little bit of skill, just
so
a little.
The way you stop a bad guy with a knife is a good guy with a gun. But, I feel like the principle probably still holds true is you want to escalate to the level of your opposition or more.
Right.
So, yeah, no, it makes sense to me to extend that constitutionally protected right to knives in addition to firearms to make sure that you can't make laws prohibiting those items.
And I think the most interesting part about this is going to be seeing how it moves through committee and stuff. I'm expecting it to move pretty efficiently. But like most things, it goes into committee and say there's someone in some field related to it that's really knowledgeable, like, hey, the intent of this bill is really, really great. But if you look here and here, just because it's focused on this area of like Second Amendment rights or something, right? You have someone that's experienced in understanding other parts of the law on that specific one, and they turn around and say, well, if you set this precedent here, then it sets it over here, and then that can be used for something you don't like abortion or transgenderism or something else, right? I doubt that with this, but there again, committees are very interesting and sometimes can bring some really enlightening ideas. But wanted to share it and let you guys know, and we'll move on to the next one.